In today's world, we move faster than our hearts can follow. The clock ticks, the phone vibrates, the news screams, and somehow the days vanish in a blur of obligations. We wake already tired, race through endless tasks, and fall asleep with worries still circling in our minds. The more we chase peace, the further it seems to drift away. Deep inside, many carry a silent ache, an emptiness we cannot name. It is the weight of unspoken stress, the quiet loneliness that lingers even in a crowd, the anxiety that grips when the lights go out and the world grows still. We tell ourselves to keep pushing, to be stronger, to try harder, yet the harder we try, the more fragile we feel. This is not weakness. This is the truth of modern living, a cycle of striving without rest, of consuming without fulfillment, of surviving without truly feeling alive. Perhaps you know this feeling well. The tension in your shoulders that never loosens. The constant thought, if I can just fix this one thing, then I'll be okay. The quiet shame that whispers, why can't I handle what everyone else seems to manage? We hide behind smiles and achievements, but inside, the exhaustion grows. Vacations bring only temporary relief. Self-help slogans fade as quickly as they appear, and money or status fail to fill the hollowness that returns when the noise subsides. Beneath all the masks, we long for something deeper. Not another promise of success, but a true release. Not another distraction, but a real refuge. This is where an ancient wisdom speaks to the pain of our modern time. The teachings of the Buddha do not demand blind belief or rigid rituals. They offer something far more radical, far more compassionate, a path back to the quiet center we have forgotten. A way of living that does not deny suffering, but transforms our relationship with it. These teachings are not about escape. They are about freedom from the endless cycle of craving, fear, and restlessness that has become the invisible prison of our age. In their simplicity lies profound medicine, mindfulness that allows us to breathe again, compassion that softens the hard edges of the heart, wisdom that shows us suffering is not the end, but the doorway to liberation. Imagine what it would feel like to no longer be controlled by every anxious thought, every wave of stress, every disappointment. Imagine the possibility of meeting life with clarity instead of confusion, with strength instead of panic, with openness instead of fear. This is not a distant dream. It begins with one step, one breath, one choice to pause. It begins with the courage to look within and to see that peace is not somewhere else, waiting in the future. Peace is already here, waiting beneath the noise, waiting within you. The journey we are about to take together is not a lecture. It is a story about the struggles you already know, the stress, the pressure, the longing, and about the timeless solutions that Buddhist wisdom offers to each of them. Over the course of this journey, we will walk through 10 doors. Each door opens to a human pain, stress, money, relationships, anxiety, and more. And through each door, we will discover not despair, but a path forward. You will hear the truths of suffering, but also the gentle power of release. You will see the weight of craving, but also the freedom of letting go. And most importantly, you will feel how these teachings are not distant or abstract. They are alive, here, now, waiting to guide you. The pressure builds quietly, almost invisibly. At first, it feels manageable, just another busy day, just another set of responsibilities. But slowly, it grows heavier. The stress seeps into your mornings, steals your nights, and settles into your body like a weight you cannot shake off. Modern life has made stress a constant companion. From the moment the alarm rings, we are rushed into a rhythm that rarely allows us to breathe. Emails pile up before breakfast. Bills wait like silent demands. News headlines warn of disasters, instability, and endless reasons to worry. Even in the safety of our homes, our minds do not rest. We scroll, compare, compete and consume, always reaching for something that never seems to arrive. This stress is not just an inconvenience. It shapes our lives in profound ways. It tightens our muscles until headaches become normal. It speeds our heartbeat, floods our systems with hormones, and leaves us restless even in the stillness of night. It strains relationships because when we are carrying too much inside, patience slips away and kindness feels scarce. It weakens our clarity, so decisions become clouded and mistakes multiply. And worst of all, it convinces us that this is just the way life is meant to be. We begin to normalize the abnormal. We tell ourselves, everyone is stressed. Everyone is exhausted. This is what success requires. But deep down, a quieter truth whispers, this is not living. This is surviving. The emotional toll of stress is even heavier than the physical. Stress whispers that you are never enough, that you must do more, be more, achieve more, or you will fall behind. It tells you that rest is weakness, that slowing down means failure. And so we push. We silence our bodies when they beg for rest. We ignore the signals of burnout. We bury feelings under endless tasks, hoping that achievement will one day reward us with peace. Yet peace never comes that way. The more we chase it, the further it runs. Think of how many times you have told yourself, after this week, I'll feel better. After this project, after this debt, after this crisis, then I will rest. And yet, the cycle repeats. Stress breeds more stress. Each accomplishment quickly fades into the background, replaced by the next demand. It is like drinking salt water. For a moment, the thirst seems quenched, but soon the dryness returns, fiercer than before. The cycle of striving leaves us emptier, not fuller in Buddhist teachings. This endless cycle of stress and striving is not new. It is simply a modern face of what the Buddha called dukkha, the suffering that runs through human life. Dukkha is not just obvious pain. It is also the subtle dissatisfaction, the unease, the restlessness that colors even good moments. Stress is one of its clearest expressions in today's world. We think stress comes from outside, from work, from money, from others, but in truth, its root lies within the mind. It arises from our grasping, our clinging, our constant resistance to the way things are. We want life to move faster or slower. We want more control, more certainty, more guarantees. And when life refuses to obey, tension builds inside us. This is where the Buddhist path offers a radical shift. It does not promise a life without challenges. It does not tell us that we can eliminate every burden. Instead, it invites us to change our relationship with stress itself. The practice begins not with escape, but with presence. Instead of pushing stress away or pretending it doesn't exist, we learn to turn toward it, to breathe into it, to see it clearly for what it is, not an enemy, but a teacher. When we observe stress without judgment, we begin to see the stories we attach to it. We see how a single demand in email, a bill, a disagreement quickly multiplies into a storm because of the narrative our mind builds around it. We don't just experience the stress of the moment. We add layers of fear, blame, and self-criticism. This is the second arrow, the suffering we create on top of the original wound. Mindfulness is the key that opens the door out of this prison. Simple yet profound, it is the practice of paying attention to the present moment with acceptance. When stress rises, instead of letting it spiral into panic, we pause. We notice the breath, the body, the tension in our chest, or the racing in our thoughts. We acknowledge it gently. This is stress. This is pressure. And in that acknowledgement, something shifts. Stress loses its grip. It is no longer an overwhelming storm, but a passing weather. The breath becomes an anchor, reminding us that we are here, now, safe in this moment. The stories lose their power, and clarity begins to return. Consider a moment when stress consumed you. Perhaps you were late for an important meeting. The mind began to race. I'm always messing up. They'll think I'm unreliable. This could ruin everything. In seconds, the stress of being late transformed into fear of failure, shame, and even despair. Now imagine the same moment approached with mindfulness. The body feels tense. The heart beats fast. But instead of adding stories, you take a slow breath. You name it. I feel anxious. You accept rather than resist. Suddenly, the situation is no longer unbearable. You can act with clarity, send a message, explain, move forward. The stress remains, but it no longer controls you. You have shifted from reaction to response. The teachings describe this as creating space between stimulus and response. Stress will always arise, but in that space, we gain freedom. We are no longer puppets pulled by every demand. We become steady, grounded, aware. This practice does not erase stress, but it transforms our relationship with it. We stop drowning and we start swimming. Over time, the habit of mindfulness changes the very patterns of the mind. What once triggered panic now invites calm observation. What once led to endless rumination now becomes a moment to return to the breath. Asterisk. This path is not about perfection. You will not always catch stress in time. Sometimes the storm will carry you away. But every time you remember to pause, every time you return to the breath, you strengthen the muscle of awareness. Slowly, stress loses its absolute power. You begin to trust that even in chaos, there is a quiet center within you. That center cannot be broken by emails, bills, or expectations. It is always here waiting. And as we walk further, we will see that stress is only the first doorway. Beneath it lie deeper struggles, money, relationships, anxiety that demand not just quick fixes, but the steady wisdom of the path that has guided countless hearts before us. This journey is just beginning, but already the possibility of release is within reach. Stress has many disguises. Sometimes it is loud, crashing into our days with obvious force. A sudden deadline, an argument, a financial shock. Other times it is quiet, hiding in the background, humming beneath every thought. It is the subtle tension you carry without noticing. The way your jaw clenches while driving, the way your shoulders rise as you scroll through the endless tide of information. This constant undercurrent of pressure shapes the way you see the world. It narrows your vision, so problems seem larger than they are. It makes the future look threatening, even when nothing has happened yet. It tricks you into believing that life itself is an enemy to be conquered, rather than a gift to be experienced. Think about the way stress shows up in small, ordinary moments. You are stuck in traffic, and frustration boils. The mind leaps forward. I'll be late, they'll be angry. This whole day will collapse. In truth, you are just sitting in a car. But the mind creates a storm. Or you receive a short message without an emoji or a kind word, and suddenly you wonder, are they upset with me? Did I do something wrong? In truth, it is only a few words on a screen. But stress magnifies it into a drama. These small moments repeat hundreds of times a week, building a background hum that drains energy and joy. Buddhist wisdom calls this craving for control. We crave a smooth road, a predictable response, a life free from interruptions. When reality disagrees, stress is born. The mind resists what is, and in that resistance, we suffer. This is why mindfulness is so powerful. It does not erase traffic or messages or interruptions. It changes how we meet them. Instead of tightening, we soften. Instead of spiraling, we pause. We begin to accept life as it is, not as we demand it to be. And in that acceptance, stress begins to dissolve. There is a story often told about a monk and a heavy bucket. Each day, the monk would carry water from the well to the temple. At first, he hated it. The bucket was heavy, the path long, his shoulders ached. But one day, as he carried the bucket, he stopped fighting. He noticed the coolness of the water, the rhythm of his steps, the sound of birds in the trees. The burden was the same, but his relationship with it had changed. Carrying the bucket became a practice, not a punishment. Stress works the same way. The weight may not change, but when we change our relationship to it, the suffering lessens. Modern science confirms what these teachings have offered for centuries. Studies show that mindfulness practices reduce the body's stress response. Heart rate slows. Blood pressure lowers. The brain shifts out of survival mode. But beyond the science lies something deeper, a sense of freedom. You are no longer chained to the next crisis, the next deadline, the next worry. You learn to step out of the stream and watch the current flow by without being swept away. And yet, some resist this teaching. They say, I can't slow down. If I stop pushing, everything will fall apart. But here lies the paradox. The harder we push, the less effective we become. Stress narrows our focus until we cannot see clearly. It robs us of creativity, patience, and perspective. When we learn to pause, to breathe, to center ourselves, we actually become more capable. We see solutions more easily. We respond with wisdom instead of panic. Rest is not weakness, it is the source of real strength. Imagine two people facing the same challenge. One reacts with stress, rushing, panicking, lashing out. The other takes a breath, centers, and responds calmly. Which one will succeed more often? Which one will build trust, clarity, and resilience? This is the gift of mindfulness. It does not remove challenges, but it transforms how we face them. To begin this transformation, we do not need complicated rituals. We start with something as simple as the breath. In the midst of stress, place one hand on your chest, one hand on your belly, and breathe slowly. Feel the rise and fall. Feel the body grounding itself. This single act interrupts the spiral. It creates space. With practice, the breath becomes your constant ally, always available, always steady. In meetings, in arguments, in moments of fear, the breath is your refuge. But mindfulness is not only about breathing. It is about awareness in every action. Washing dishes becomes a meditation. Eating becomes a moment of gratitude. Walking becomes a rhythm of presence. When life itself becomes the practice, stress loses its hiding places. You discover that peace is not found in escaping life, but in fully entering it. There is also compassion. Stress thrives when we judge ourselves harshly. When we say, I should be stronger, I should be calmer, I should have it all together. This inner voice only multiplies the burden. Compassion silences that voice. It says, you are human. You are allowed to feel overwhelmed. You are allowed to rest. Just as you would comfort a dear friend, you learn to comfort yourself. This self-compassion is not indulgence. It is healing. It gives you the strength to continue with kindness rather than cruelty. The Buddha often compared the mind to a wild horse. Stress is like the reins pulled too tight, making the horse fight harder. Mindfulness is the gentle listening, the trust that allows the horse to settle. In time, the horse walks calmly, carrying you where you need to go without struggle. As you practice, you may notice moments of spaciousness, a silence between thoughts, a calm beneath the surface. These moments may be brief, but they are real. They are glimpses of the peace that has always been within you. With time, those glimpses grow longer, more stable, until stress no longer defines your life. This is the first step of the journey, transforming stress not by resisting it, but by meeting it with awareness and compassion. The weight may remain, but the suffering lightens. And once we learn to soften in the face of stress, we are ready to look at the next burden modern life places upon us, the struggle with money, with scarcity, with the endless chase for more. The doorway opens, and we step through. Money is one of the deepest sources of stress in the modern world. It shapes where we live, what we eat, how we raise children, and how safe we feel when the future is uncertain. For many, the worry about money never ends. Bills arrive before paychecks. Debt grows faster than savings. Even those who earn more than enough often live with a quiet fear. What if it all disappears? Money promises security, yet for countless people, it delivers anxiety. The pursuit of money often feels like running on a treadmill. No matter how fast you move, the ground beneath you never carries you forward. You achieve a promotion, but expenses rise. You buy something new, but the satisfaction fades quickly. You save for a dream vacation, but soon another goal replaces it. This endless chase is exhausting. It convinces us that we are always behind, that we must keep striving or risk falling into ruin. And even when the numbers in the account look stable, the heart still trembles, because no number ever feels like enough. Behind this constant financial pressure lies something deeper. Fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of not being able to protect the people we love. Fear of being judged as unsuccessful or unworthy. Money is not only about survival, it is about identity. In many cultures, and especially in modern Western life, money is tied to self-worth. The size of your house, the brand of your clothes, the title on your business card, these become symbols of value. Without them, people feel invisible, less than ashamed. With them, people feel validated, even if only for a short while. This connection between money and self-worth is a heavy chain, one that keeps many in cycles of overwork and despair. But even wealth does not free us from this cycle. Look closely at those who seem to have it all. Many carry the same anxiety as those who struggle. They worry about losing status, about competition, about investments that might collapse. Some live in constant fear of betrayal or theft. Others numb themselves with excess, never finding the satisfaction they hoped wealth would bring. The truth is clear. Money can solve material problems, but it cannot solve the deeper hunger of the human heart. The Buddhist teachings describe this hunger as craving. Craving is the endless reaching for more, the belief that happiness lies just beyond the next purchase, the next paycheck, the next milestone. But craving is never satisfied. The moment we grasp what we wanted, the mind creates a new desire. It is like chasing the horizon. You can run for a lifetime and never reach it. This craving does not make us greedy monsters. It makes us human, but it also makes us suffer because we place our hope in something that cannot truly deliver lasting peace. There is a story of a man who had everything he wanted. A house full of riches, tables filled with food, closets overflowing with clothes. Yet every night he lay awake, terrified of losing it all. Meanwhile, a poor farmer down the road slept peacefully with nothing but a roof and a bowl of rice. What was the difference? Not money, but the mind. One was enslaved by craving and fear. The other lived with acceptance and enoughness. This is the heart of Buddhist wisdom. Money itself is not the problem. It is the attachment to money, the identification with it, the belief that it defines us, that creates suffering. Money is a tool. It can build, heal, support, or harm, depending on how it is used. When we see it clearly, money loses its power to control us. When we cling to it as our source of worth, it becomes a prison. So how do we change this relationship? The first step is awareness. Notice the thoughts that arise around money. Do you feel shame when you cannot buy something? Do you feel pride when you spend extravagantly? Do you measure yourself against others, always comparing salaries, houses, cars? Each of these is a reflection of craving. When we bring mindfulness to these patterns, we loosen their grip. We begin to see money as numbers on a screen, paper in the hand, not as the measure of our soul. The second step is gratitude. Instead of focusing only on what is missing, we practice seeing what is already here. Gratitude interrupts the cycle of scarcity. It reminds us that enoughness is not a number. It is a perspective. Consider this. If you have food today, shelter tonight, and a safe place to rest, you already possess what billions of people long for. Gratitude does not erase challenges, but it shifts the heart from fear to abundance. From this space, money becomes lighter, less threatening, more manageable. The third step is generosity. This may seem paradoxical. How can giving ease our fear of not having enough? But in truth, generosity is the antidote to scarcity. When you give, whether it is money, time, attention, or kindness, you prove to yourself that you are not defined by what you hold, but by what you release. Each act of generosity weakens the chains of attachment. Each act expands your heart. You discover a wealth far greater than numbers, the wealth of connection, compassion, and freedom without imagine giving a meal to someone hungry. The money spent is gone, but the warmth remains in both hearts. Imagine donating a small amount to a cause that matters. The amount may be small, but the impact ripples beyond what you see. Generosity transforms the very energy of money. It shifts it from fear to love, from scarcity to abundance. This path does not demand that you reject money or live in poverty. It invites you to hold money with wisdom, to earn it with integrity, to spend it with mindfulness, to save it without fear, and to give it with joy. In doing so, money becomes what it was always meant to be, a tool, not a tyrant. And so, the journey with money is not about escaping financial responsibility. It is about freedom. Freedom from shame, freedom from comparison, freedom from the endless hunger for more. When we learn to relate to money with awareness, gratitude, and generosity, it no longer controls us. It serves us. And from this place, the heart feels lighter, open to deeper forms of wealth, the wealth of peace, connection, and purpose. This is the beginning of the second doorway. Beyond stress, beyond the chase for money, lies the next challenge of modern life: relationships. The way we connect, the way we love, the way we suffer when bonds break. But before we arrive there, we must first walk further into this truth about money, to see how craving and freedom dance in every financial choice we make. The grip of money reaches far beyond numbers. It touches how families interact, how friendships evolve, and how we view ourselves when we look in the mirror. Think about how often arguments in households stem from finances: how to spend, how to save, who controls what. Couples who deeply love each other often find themselves divided when money becomes the language of fear. Parents who want the best for their children sometimes push themselves into debt, carrying silent guilt when they cannot provide every desire. Young people measure their worth by comparing what they own to what others display on screens. The truth is not that money is evil, but that the mind, when trapped by craving and comparison, transforms money into a battlefield. The Buddha spoke of 3 poisons of the mind: greed, hatred, and delusion. Money often fuels all 3. Greed whispers, "If I just had more, then I would finally be safe, finally be happy." Hatred appears when jealousy rises, when we resent those who seem to have more than we do. Delusion appears when we believe that possessions can deliver lasting peace, when we confuse temporary pleasure with ultimate fulfillment. These poisons do not make us bad people. They make us human beings caught in patterns of suffering. But just as poisons can be neutralized with medicine, these mental toxins can be healed with wisdom. Consider this: the pursuit of wealth has no finish line. If we place our happiness on reaching a certain financial goal, we set ourselves up for disappointment. The moment we reach the milestone, the mind creates a new one. 10,000 becomes 20. A small house becomes a bigger house. Enough savings becomes never enough. This is why the Buddha taught the power of contentment. Contentment does not mean giving up ambition or living without progress. It means knowing how to recognize sufficiency. It is the quiet ability to say, "This is enough. I am enough." In that moment, peace arises not from the outside, but from within. Imagine a person walking through a desert, desperate for water. Finally, they find a small spring. If they drink with gratitude, the water refreshes and sustains them. But if they demand more and more, never satisfied, they remain thirsty no matter how much they consume. This is how craving works. Gratitude transforms the smallest sip into abundance. Craving turns even an ocean into drought. One of the most powerful ways to loosen money's hold is to reflect on impermanence. Everything we own will one day be gone. The clothes will fade, the car will rust, the house will pass to another family. Even our bank accounts will outlive us, pass to others after we are gone. When we deeply understand this, we see the futility of clinging. Money is useful, but temporary. It cannot travel with us beyond death. What endures is not the amount we accumulated, but the kindness we shared, the integrity we lived by, and the compassion we cultivated. There is a story from the Buddhist tradition about a wealthy king who asked a wise monk how to keep his treasures forever. The monk replied, "Give them away." The king was puzzled, but the monk explained, "What you give in generosity is never lost. It becomes part of your heart, part of the lives of others, part of the fabric of compassion that endures beyond time. What you cling to will vanish. What you release will remain." In this way, generosity is not only an act of kindness, it is an act of wisdom. It transforms fleeting wealth into lasting joy. This does not mean generosity must always be grand. A simple smile, a meal shared, a small donation, or even the gift of listening with full attention. These acts create ripples of abundance that money alone cannot measure. In fact, the beauty of generosity is that it is available to everyone, regardless of financial standing. The poorest person can give kindness. The busiest person can give presence. And every act weakens the illusion that money is the only form of wealth. As we shift our relationship to money, we also begin to see its true purpose. Money, when used wisely, can relieve suffering. It can provide shelter, food, education, healing. When guided by compassion, money becomes an extension of love. But when driven by fear, it becomes a tool of imprisonment. The choice lies not in the number of dollars, but in the state of mind behind them. This is why the practice of mindfulness with money is so crucial. Before spending, we pause and ask, will this bring peace, or will it bring more craving? Before earning, we ask, is this work aligned with integrity, or does it harm others? Before giving, we ask, am I offering from fear or from freedom? These questions guide us into a new relationship with money, one rooted in wisdom rather than compulsion. Slowly, the weight begins to lift. Bills may still come, challenges may still arise, but the fear loosens its grip. You begin to feel lighter, freer. You realize that true wealth has never been in the numbers, but in the mind that knows peace. And in that realization, money becomes what it was always meant to be, a servant, not a master. With this freedom, we can look to the next great challenge of modern life, relationships. Just as money can be both a source of support and a source of suffering, so too can our human connections. We long for closeness, for intimacy, for love. Yet relationships often bring conflict, disappointment, and pain. We enter them seeking completion, yet sometimes we find ourselves more lonely than before. The same craving that drives us to chase money also drives us to cling to people, to demand they fulfill every unspoken need. When they cannot, we suffer. This is why the journey now turns to the realm of love and connection. We have looked at stress, and we have looked at money. Both are powerful forces in modern life. Both reveal how craving and fear can dominate the human heart. Now we will look at how these same forces shape the bonds between people, bonds that can either deepen suffering or open the door to compassion and liberation. The next doorway is here. It is the story of our hearts meeting other hearts. It is the story of relationships. Human beings are born for connection. From the moment we take our first breath, we reach out for warmth, safety, and belonging. Relationships give life meaning: family, friendship, romance, community. Yet, for all their beauty, relationships also bring some of our deepest pain. Few things wound the heart as profoundly as a broken bond, a betrayal, or a love that fades. And few things create as much confusion as the longing for closeness mixed with the fear of being hurt. In modern life, relationships often carry a crushing weight of expectation. We are told that one person will complete us, that a partner should satisfy every emotional need, that family should never fail us, that friends should always remain loyal. When these expectations collide with reality, disappointment rises. A spouse forgets to listen. A friend drifts away. A parent cannot understand. Suddenly, what once felt like safety becomes a source of ache. We wonder, why can't they love me the way I need? Why can't they see me, hear me, value me? Beneath these questions lies the core of relational suffering, the belief that another person should be the answer to our inner emptiness. Think of the many forms this suffering takes. Couples who fight over the same issue again and again, unable to break the cycle. Parents and children locked in misunderstanding, separated by silence or harsh words. Friendships that dissolve over small wounds that never healed. Or the quiet loneliness of being surrounded by people, yet feeling unseen and unknown. Each of these is a mirror reflecting our craving, not just for love, but for love that looks exactly as we imagine it should. The Buddha taught that attachment is one of the strongest roots of suffering. Attachment in relationships does not mean caring, nor does it mean love itself. It means clinging, holding so tightly to an image of how things should be that we cannot accept how they are. When a partner changes, when a friend disappoints, when a family member fails, attachment resists reality and turns it into pain. We do not suffer only because people leave or betray us. We suffer because we demand they should not. We cling to permanence in a world that is always changing. Consider the story of a young woman who fell deeply in love. At first, her heart soared. Every word, every gesture felt like proof of perfection. But as time passed, small flaws appeared: forgetfulness, impatience, distraction. She grew frustrated, thinking, "This is not the person I first loved. Where did they go?" In truth, the person had not vanished. They had always been human, with strengths and weaknesses. What had changed was her attachment to an image. Love had turned into clinging, and clinging had turned into disappointment. Does this mean love is hopeless? Not at all. The path is not to abandon love, but to transform it. Buddhist teachings offer a way of loving without clinging, of caring deeply without turning others into possessions. This begins with understanding impermanence. Every person is changing, moment by moment. No relationship can remain exactly as it was. When we accept this truth, we stop demanding that others freeze into a perfect form for our comfort. Instead, we learn to meet them freshly each day, allowing them to grow, to falter, to be human. Another key is compassion. True compassion in relationships means seeing beyond behavior to the suffering beneath. When a partner speaks harshly, compassion asks, "What pain drives these words?" When a friend withdraws, compassion asks, "What struggle lies behind their silence?" This does not excuse harmful behavior, but it softens our own response. Instead of reacting with anger or resentment, we respond with understanding. And from understanding, healing becomes possible. There is a story from the Buddhist tradition about two monks who were walking together. They came to a river where a woman needed help crossing. One monk carried her across and then continued walking. Hours later, the other monk exploded. "How could you touch her? Our vows forbid it." The first monk replied, "Brother, I set her down hours ago. Why are you still carrying her?" Relationships often work this way. Someone wounds us, perhaps even unintentionally, but we carry the hurt for years. Compassion teaches us to set it down, to release the burden we add to the original pain. Equally important is self-compassion. Many enter relationships hoping another will heal their wounds, fill their emptiness, or validate their worth. But no other person can carry that weight for long. When we lack compassion for ourselves, we demand too much from others. We turn them into saviors and resent them when they fail. Self-compassion breaks this cycle. It allows us to say, "I am worthy as I am. I do not need another person to complete me." From that foundation, we can love freely, without desperation, without clinging. Mindfulness also transforms relationships. When we listen with full attention, without rehearsing our response or judging in advance, we create space for true connection. When we speak with awareness, choosing words rooted in kindness rather than impulse, we reduce harm. Each mindful moment builds trust. Each pause before anger builds safety. Over time, mindfulness creates a relationship grounded in presence rather than reactivity. Modern relationships face unique challenges. Technology offers constant connection, yet often leaves us lonelier. Social media creates endless comparison, fueling insecurity. Work schedules and financial pressures leave little time for genuine intimacy. In this context, Buddhist practices are not abstract philosophy. They are practical tools. A few minutes of daily meditation can restore patience. A moment of deep breathing before a conversation can prevent an argument. A simple reflection on impermanence can ease the sting of disappointment. These small acts accumulate, transforming not only individual hearts, but entire relationships. To love without clinging, to care without control, to connect without demanding perfection. This is the path of freedom in relationships. It does not promise that bonds will never break, that people will never hurt us, or that love will always last. But it does promise that even in heartbreak, we can find clarity. Even in loss, we can find compassion. And even in loneliness, we can find a deeper connection with ourselves and the world. This is the first step into the realm of relationships, seeing clearly the suffering caused by attachment and the possibility of freedom through compassion and mindfulness. But there is more to uncover. Beyond the surface conflicts and disappointments lie deeper patterns of fear, longing, and vulnerability. To truly transform relationships, we must walk further into the heart, where both pain and liberation dwell side by side. The doorway opens wider, and the journey continues. The truth about relationships is that they reflect not only the other person, but also the hidden corners of our own minds. When someone criticizes us, it often awakens our own self-doubt. When someone leaves us, it ignites our fear of abandonment. When someone betrays us, it touches the tender wound of not feeling enough. In this way, relationships act like mirrors. They show us what lies beneath our surface, the unresolved fears and longings we carry quietly. This is why relationships are both deeply painful and deeply transformative. They hurt us, yes, but they also reveal what most needs healing inside ourselves. Consider how often conflict arises not from the action itself, but from the meaning we attach to it. A partner forgets an anniversary. The action is simple, a date not remembered, but the meaning might become, I am not loved. I am not important. A friend takes longer to reply to a message. The action is neutral. They were busy. But the meaning we create might be, they do not value me. These meanings fuel our suffering. We live not only with what happens, but with the endless stories our minds build around it. This is where mindfulness becomes essential. Mindfulness allows us to pause before creating the story, to see the raw fact as it is. From this space, compassion can enter. Forgiveness is another key. Forgiveness in the Buddhist sense does not mean excusing harm or pretending pain did not happen. It means releasing the grip of resentment so it no longer poisons our hearts. Holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. Forgiveness frees us, whether or not the other changes. Sometimes the most powerful act of love is letting go not of the person, but of the hatred we carry toward them. This is not easy. The wounds of relationships can run deep, shaped over years of betrayal, neglect, or misunderstanding. But here is the paradox. The very pain we resist can become the doorway to compassion. When we sit with our own heartbreak, we see how universal it is. Everyone has been disappointed. Everyone has felt unseen. Everyone has carried loneliness. In this recognition, our hearts begin to open. We stop seeing our suffering as unique punishment and start seeing it as part of the shared human condition. And from that place, kindness flows more easily. There is a story of a man whose wife left him unexpectedly. At first, he was consumed by bitterness. Every day he replayed her departure in his mind, feeding anger and sorrow. One day, he sat in meditation and asked himself, "Am I the only one who has been left?" Instantly, the image of countless people arose, millions who had felt the same loss, the same confusion. His pain did not vanish, but it softened. He realized he was not alone. Compassion entered, first for himself, then for all who suffered as he did. That compassion became his healing. Relationships also test our ability to balance love with boundaries. Compassion does not mean allowing harm to continue. Sometimes, the most compassionate act is to walk away, to say no more, to protect ourselves from abuse. Buddhism does not teach passive endurance of harm. It teaches wise discernment. Compassion includes ourselves. Boundaries, when set with clarity and kindness, are acts of respect, both for us and for the other person. They prevent cycles of harm from repeating and create the conditions for genuine healing. Equanimity is another gift in relationships. Equanimity does not mean indifference. It means balance. It allows us to love fully without being destroyed by change. We care, but we do not cling. We love, but we do not demand permanence. When relationships shift, as they inevitably do, we grieve, but we are not shattered. Equanimity steadies the heart in the storms of love and loss. It teaches us that joy and sorrow, union and separation, are all part of the great rhythm of life. Modern relationships face particular struggles that ancient teachings illuminate with surprising clarity. The culture of instant gratification makes patience rare. The flood of digital images creates illusions of perfect love, flawless families, endless happiness. Comparing our real, imperfect bonds to these illusions only deepens dissatisfaction. Mindfulness pulls us back to reality, to the simple joy of a shared meal, to the tenderness of a caring word, to the imperfect beauty of real human connection. When we stop comparing, we begin to appreciate that another challenge is loneliness. Many live in crowded cities, surrounded by people, yet feel profoundly alone. The Buddha taught that true connection arises not from numbers, but from presence. You can be with thousands and still feel isolated, or you can be with one person in full presence and feel deeply seen. Cultivating mindfulness in relationships, truly listening, truly being there creates bonds that technology alone cannot provide. Presence is the rarest and most precious gift we can offer one another. And yet, no matter how mindful, compassionate, or balanced we are, relationships will always carry pain. People will change. Bonds will shift. Loved ones will pass away. This is the nature of impermanence. But when we accept this truth, we stop fighting against it. We stop demanding that love defy the laws of life. Instead, we savor each moment of connection, knowing it is precious because it will not last forever. Love becomes not possession, but presence. Not control, but gratitude. As this understanding deepens, relationships transform. They are no longer prisons of expectation, but paths of growth. They teach us patience, compassion, forgiveness, and equanimity. They break our hearts, but in doing so, they open them wider. They disappoint us, but in that disappointment, they reveal the beauty of loving without conditions. So far, our journey has passed through stress, money, and now relationships. Each reveals a form of suffering born from craving, attachment, and resistance. Each also opens a path of liberation through mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. But there is another thread that runs through them all, a force that touches every aspect of modern life: anxiety. Anxiety is the shadow that follows us, the unease that lingers even when nothing seems wrong. It is the restless energy that keeps us awake, the voice that whispers, "What if?" at every turn. And so, the next doorway calls us to face anxiety itself, to see its roots, to feel its grip, and to discover the freedom that arises when we stop running from it and instead meet it with awareness and courage. The journey continues. Anxiety is one of the most persistent shadows of modern life. Unlike stress, which is often tied to specific demands, anxiety lingers even when nothing is happening. It whispers in the quiet hours, fills empty spaces, and transforms ordinary moments into threats. You may wake in the middle of the night with a pounding heart, even though the house is silent. You may sit in a meeting, unable to hear what is being said because your mind is racing with what-ifs. You may even feel anxious in moments of happiness, afraid that joy cannot last, that loss is waiting around the corner. Anxiety is not just an occasional feeling. For many, it becomes a constant state of existence, coloring every decision, every relationship, every breath. The modern world feeds anxiety in countless ways. News cycles focus on danger, amplifying every crisis. Social media magnifies comparison, making us feel inadequate and behind. Workplaces demand constant availability, as if resting is a failure. And the pace of life itself leaves little room for grounding. We are connected to everything, yet anchored to nothing. Surrounded by noise, we struggle to hear our own hearts. This environment leaves the mind restless, scanning for threats that may not even exist. Anxiety becomes the body's survival response, stuck in overdrive, a fire alarm ringing long after the smoke is cleared. The effects of anxiety are profound. Physically, it floods the body with tension, quickens the heartbeat, disrupts digestion, weakens the immune system. Emotionally, it creates irritability, restlessness, and a sense of helplessness. Spiritually, it cuts us off from presence, chaining us to an imagined future that never arrives. Worst of all, anxiety convinces us that we are powerless against it. We start to believe that fear is who we are, that we are broken, fragile, doomed to be overwhelmed. But this is an illusion. Anxiety is not our identity. It is a passing state of mind, one that can be understood, softened, and released. Buddhist wisdom offers a unique way of meeting anxiety. It does not deny its existence, nor does it promise that life will be free from uncertainty. Instead, it teaches us to face anxiety directly, to see its roots, and to free ourselves from the extra suffering we add to it. The Buddha compared life's unavoidable difficulties to being struck by a first arrow. Anxiety is often the second arrow, the one we fire at ourselves. A worry arises, and we multiply it with stories. This means I'm failing. This means something terrible will happen. This means I can't handle life. The initial discomfort may be real, but the layers of thought and fear deepen the wound. When we learn to stop shooting the second arrow, anxiety loses much of its power. Mindfulness is the key to this shift. In moments of anxiety, the instinct is to run to distract ourselves, to numb, to push it away. But running only strengthens fear. Mindfulness invites us to pause, to feel the racing heart, the tight chest, the restless mind. To name it gently, this is anxiety. This is fear. In naming it, we create space. The fear is no longer the whole of us. It is a passing experience. Like clouds moving across the sky, anxiety comes and goes. We are the sky, not the storm. There is a practice in Buddhism called staying with the breath. When anxiety rises, the mind scatters into the future, imagining disasters. The breath pulls us back to the present. Inhaling, we know we are breathing in. Exhaling, we know we are breathing out. This simple act grounds us in what is real, not what is imagined. With practice, each breath becomes an anchor, reminding us that we are safe in this moment. The future may hold uncertainty, but the present holds peace. Anxiety feeds on the future. Mindfulness feeds on now. Another powerful teaching is impermanence. Anxiety convinces us that fear will last forever, but nothing does. Every emotion, no matter how overwhelming, eventually passes. To see this truth is to loosen fear's grip. The racing heart slows. The restless mind quiets. The storm of anxiety, like all storms, moves on. When we remember impermanence, we stop panicking that fear will consume us forever. Instead, we wait, breathe, and let it pass. Compassion also transforms anxiety. Often, when we feel anxious, we judge ourselves harshly. We say, "Why am I so weak? Why can't I handle this? What's wrong with me?" These judgments only increase fear. Compassion speaks a different language. It says, "Of course you are afraid. You are human. You are doing your best." Imagine holding a frightened child. You would not yell at them for being scared. You would comfort them. Anxiety is the frightened child within us. When we meet it with tenderness, it begins to soften. There is a story of a monk who was once paralyzed by fear when meditating in a forest. Every sound seemed like a threat. Every shadow looked like danger. He tried to fight the fear, but it only grew. Finally, he stopped resisting. He said to himself, "If fear wants to stay, let it stay. If fear wants to consume me, let it consume me." The moment he surrendered, the fear began to dissolve. By no longer fighting it, he discovered freedom. This is the paradox. When we stop resisting anxiety, it loses its power. In the modern world, anxiety often arises from uncertainty about jobs, health, relationships, the future of the planet. We long for guarantees, but life offers none. The Buddha taught that uncertainty is part of existence. Trying to control the uncontrollable only deepens anxiety. The path is not control, but trust. Trust in the breath. Trust in impermanence. Trust that whatever comes, we can meet it with awareness and compassion. This trust does not remove challenges, but it gives us the courage to face them without drowning in fear. Anxiety also shrinks our world. It convinces us to avoid, to withdraw, to stop living fully. But each time we meet anxiety with mindfulness, our world expands again. We discover that we can attend the gathering, face the challenge, live the life we feared was impossible. Each moment of courage weakens anxiety's chains. Each breath of awareness strengthens our freedom. This is the first step into understanding anxiety, seeing it not as a permanent curse, but as a passing experience that can be softened with mindfulness, compassion, and trust. The journey continues, for there are deeper layers to explore the roots of anxiety and identity, craving, and the endless stories the mind creates. To walk further is to uncover not only how to ease anxiety, but how to live beyond its grip in a freedom that fear cannot touch. Anxiety thrives on uncertainty, but underneath that uncertainty lies an even deeper cause, the illusion of control. We want life to bend to our plans. We want guarantees that loved ones will stay, that jobs will last, that our bodies will remain healthy. But life does not promise such certainty. When the reality of change collides with our craving for stability, anxiety blossoms. It is the mind's attempt to hold back the ocean, to freeze the flowing river. And no matter how hard we try, the water slips through our fingers. The Buddha described this in the chain of dependent origination. From ignorance arises craving. From craving arises clinging. From clinging arises becoming. And from becoming arises suffering. Anxiety is born when we cling to what cannot be fixed in place. We fear losing what we love. We fear not gaining what we crave. We fear the unknown, the uncontrollable, the inevitable shifts of existence. To see this clearly is to take the first step toward freedom. When we accept impermanence as the fabric of life, anxiety loosens its grip. Change is no longer the enemy. It becomes the teacher. There is a story of a farmer whose horse ran away. The neighbors cried, "How unlucky!" The farmer replied, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returned with 2 wild horses. The neighbors shouted, "How fortunate!" The farmer replied, "Maybe." Later, the farmer's son tried to tame one of the wild horses and broke his leg. The neighbors groaned, "How terrible!" The farmer replied, "Maybe." Soon after, soldiers came to draft young men for war, but the son was spared because of his broken leg. The neighbors marveled, "How lucky!" The farmer replied, "Maybe." This story reminds us that life cannot be reduced to fixed judgments. What seems like disaster may hide blessings. What seems like fortune may conceal trials. Anxiety arises when we demand certainty in a world that offers only maybe. Freedom arises when we let go of the demand to know and instead rest in trust that another root of anxiety is identity. We tie our worth to roles, titles, appearances. I must be the perfect parent. I must be the reliable worker. I must be the strong friend. When these roles are threatened, anxiety floods in. Who am I if I fail? Who am I if others see my flaws? Buddhism teaches that the self is not fixed. It is a collection of changing conditions, thoughts, emotions, memories, body. To cling to a rigid identity is to invite fear every time reality shifts. But when we see that the self is fluid, anxiety weakens. We are not trapped in one role. We are free to change, to fall, to rise again. Mindfulness practices reveal this truth. Sit quietly and watch the stream of thoughts. Notice how quickly they come and go. One moment anxious, the next calm. One moment proud, the next ashamed. If the self were fixed, these shifts would be impossible. But they are constant. Seeing this, we realize anxiety is not who we are. It is a visitor, a cloud passing through the vast sky of awareness. The sky is never harmed by the storm god. To meet anxiety with courage, we practice non-resistance. Instead of fighting fear, we sit with it. We breathe into it. We allow it to be. At first, this feels unbearable. But over time, we see that fear is simply energy moving through the body. A racing heart, a tight chest, a restless mind. When we stop labeling these sensations as danger, they lose their power. The heart beats, the chest tightens, the mind races, and then, slowly, they settle. Non-resistance turns the monster into mist. Compassion deepens this practice. Anxiety often isolates us. We feel defective, different, ashamed. But when we look around, we see that countless others live with the same fear. The student before an exam, a parent fearing for a child, the elder facing illness. Anxiety is not our private curse. It is a shared human experience. When we remember this, compassion flows. We hold our own fear tenderly. We extend kindness to others who tremble. And in this shared humanity, anxiety softens into connection. Equanimity offers the final medicine. Equanimity is the steady mind that neither clings to joy nor recoils from fear. It is the calm center that watches the waves rise and fall without being tossed. In anxiety, equanimity whispers, "This too will pass." It reminds us that no storm is permanent, that the mind can remain open even when the body shakes. Equanimity is not cold detachment. It is warmth without panic, clarity without obsession. It allows us to live fully, even when uncertainty surrounds us. Modern culture often urges us to conquer anxiety, to defeat it, to eradicate it. But the Buddhist path is gentler. It invites us not to conquer fear, but to befriend it, to see anxiety as a teacher, showing us where we cling, where we resist, where we forget impermanence. Each anxious moment becomes an invitation to return to the breath, to return to compassion, to return to the truth of change. Anxiety may still arise, but it no longer defines our lives. There is an image in Buddhist teaching of the lotus flower. The lotus blooms in muddy water, untouched by the dirt around it. Anxiety is the mud, messy, uncomfortable, unavoidable. But within that mud, the lotus of clarity and compassion can bloom. We do not need to wait for perfect conditions. We can find freedom in the very heart of fear. As we close this doorway, we see how stress, money, relationships, and anxiety all intertwine. Each reveals a form of suffering born from craving, clinging, and illusion. Each also opens a path of liberation through mindfulness, compassion, and equanimity. But our journey is not finished. Beyond anxiety lies another challenge: the subtle poisons of the mind, the cravings and delusions that quietly shape our days. To walk further is to drain these poisons, to clear the stream of consciousness, to see with fresh eyes. The next doorway calls us deeper, into the hidden roots of suffering and the possibility of a mind made clear. Not all suffering shouts. Some of it whispers. It hides in the corners of the mind, unnoticed, yet quietly shaping the way we live. These are the subtle poisons of the mind, the cravings, delusions, and restless currents that drain energy without us even realizing. Unlike obvious struggles such as stress or heartbreak, these poisons often operate beneath awareness. We may not see them clearly, but we feel their effects: unease, dissatisfaction, restlessness that lingers even in moments of comfort. The Buddha called these outflows asavas, mental currents that keep us tied to suffering. Consider the craving for approval. On the surface, it may not feel destructive. We want others to like us, to value us, to see us in a good light. But beneath this craving lies a subtle poison. It shapes the way we speak, the choices we make, the dreams we follow. We may sacrifice authenticity to gain acceptance. We may hide our true selves out of fear of rejection. Each time we drain energy, not from what others say, but from the tension of living against our own truth. Another subtle poison is the restless pursuit of distraction. We check our phones dozens of times a day, not because anything urgent awaits, but because silence feels unbearable. We turn to entertainment, consumption, and noise to avoid sitting with ourselves. Yet each distraction leaves us emptier than before. We are like a thirsty person drinking salt water. The more we consume, the thirstier we become. This restlessness is not obvious suffering, yet it robs us of peace. That there is also the poison of wrong views, beliefs we cling to without questioning. For instance, the belief that happiness lies only in achievement, or that we are permanently broken, or that we must always compare ourselves to others. These views quietly color our world, shaping every thought and choice. When we cling to them, we suffer. But because they seem so normal, we rarely challenge them. The Buddha taught that the way to drain these poisons begins with clear seeing. To see clearly is to notice the small spark of craving before it becomes a wildfire. For example, imagine the urge to criticize someone. On the surface, it feels justified. But if we pause, we may notice that the urge arises not from care, but from our own discomfort, from a desire to elevate ourselves. With awareness, we create space. We can choose not to follow the urge. The poison weakens. Another practice is wise reflection. We ask ourselves, does this thought lead to peace or turmoil? Does this action create freedom or bondage? By questioning the direction of our thoughts, we begin to see which ones are worth following and which are not. Reflection does not require judgment. It requires honesty. A thought may arise automatically, but we are not required to obey it. With practice, we learn to let unwholesome thoughts dissolve without feeding them. Restraint is another tool. Restraint does not mean repression. It means guiding the mind rather than letting it spill everywhere. Imagine a garden hose left running wild. It soaks everything without purpose. Restraint is placing the hose in your hand, directing the flow where it nourishes. In the same way, restraint allows us to focus our energy on what truly matters, instead of scattering it across endless cravings and distractions. There is a story of a monk who compared the mind to a glass of water mixed with mud. If you keep stirring, the water stays cloudy. But if you let it rest, the mud settles and the water becomes clear. The subtle poisons are like the mud. Our constant agitation keeps them swirling, leaving us unable to see clearly. But when we practice mindfulness, reflection, and restraint, the mind begins to settle. Slowly, the poisons sink and clarity emerges. In modern life, the poisons often take the shape of habits. Checking notifications before even rising from bed, judging ourselves harshly after every mistake, consuming more than we need, buying not out of necessity, but out of emptiness. None of these habits may feel catastrophic, yet they accumulate, pulling us deeper into restlessness. Awareness transforms them. To notice the pull of the phone and choose a breath instead. To hear the harsh inner critic and replace it with compassion. To pause before purchasing and ask, will this bring peace, or is it just another craving? Each small shift drains a little more poison from the stream of the mind. This practice is gradual. The poisons do not disappear overnight. But with patience, each moment of awareness cleanses. Each act of restraint strengthens. Each reflection deepens clarity. Over time, the mind becomes like a calm lake, reflecting reality without distortion. What once seemed like endless dissatisfaction transforms into peace, and yet the journey goes deeper. These poisons are not only habits, they are tied to the very structure of how suffering arises. To fully understand and release them, we must look at the chain of dependent origination, the way one condition leads to another, the way suffering is built step by step. When we see this chain clearly, we gain the power to interrupt it, to break the cycle, to find freedom. The next doorway leads us there. The poisons of the mind are subtle because they disguise themselves as normal. We rarely notice them until they have already shaped our choices. Craving hides behind ambition. Restlessness hides behind productivity. Delusion hides behind confidence. At first glance, these traits may even look admirable. Who would fault someone for wanting success, for staying busy, for feeling certain? Yet when we look more deeply, we see the cost. Ambition without wisdom leaves us burned out. Productivity without peace leaves us hollow. Certainty without reflection leaves us blind. This is why the Buddha described the poisons not as punishments from outside, but as inner currents that must be seen and understood. They are not enemies to destroy, but energies to recognize and release. Like smoke that clouds the air, they lose their power when the wind of awareness clears the space, not take the poison of craving. Craving does not only mean desire for wealth or pleasure. It appears in the constant thought that life should be other than it is. If only I had a different job, then I would be happy. If only my partner changed, then I would be at peace. If only my body looked another way, then I would feel whole. Each "if only" is a seed of craving. Left unchecked, these seeds grow into forests of dissatisfaction. We wander endlessly among them, never reaching the clearing of contentment. Mindfulness shines light on these seeds. When we hear the voice of "if only," we pause. We ask, is this true? Or is it another craving pretending to promise peace? With time, we see that the peace we seek is not at the end of the next achievement, but in the present moment. The craving weakens. The seed dries. The forest begins to thin. Restlessness is another poison that often escapes notice. It is the inability to sit still, the constant urge to move, do, achieve. Restlessness makes silence feel unbearable. It makes waiting feel like torture. In truth, restlessness is the mind's way of avoiding presence. Something within us feels uncomfortable, so we keep running. But no matter how far we run, the discomfort follows because it lives inside us. The practice of mindfulness interrupts this pattern. By choosing to sit, even for a few breaths, we face what restlessness hides. At first, it may feel unbearable, but slowly, the discomfort reveals itself for what it is. Just sensations, just thoughts. The monster shrinks to its true size. Delusion, perhaps the subtlest poison, is the hardest to recognize. It is the mistaken belief that we see clearly when we do not. It convinces us that we are separate from others, that our identity is fixed, that happiness can be found in external things. Delusion is like wearing colored glasses without realizing. The world looks tinted, and we believe it is reality. Buddhist practice is the act of removing the glasses. We begin to see that we are not separate, but interconnected. We see that the self is not fixed, but flowing. We see that happiness is not in possessions, but in presence. This seeing breaks the spell of delusion. The work of draining these poisons is not about blame. It is not about calling ourselves bad or flawed. It is about honesty. It is about learning to recognize the small turns of the mind that lead us into suffering. Each time we catch a craving before it becomes a chain. Each time we notice restlessness before it becomes panic. Each time we question a delusion before it hardens into certainty. We free ourselves a little more. There is a story of a meditator who came to his teacher, frustrated. "I keep failing," he said. "Every time I sit, I am filled with craving, with restlessness, with doubt. I cannot find peace." The teacher smiled and replied, "Good. Now you are seeing the truth. Do not fight them. Do not cling to them. Simply watch." In watching, they lose their power. The meditator returned to his practice, and slowly, the poisons began to weaken. The teacher's wisdom was simple. Awareness itself is the medicine dot in daily life. We can practice this medicine in ordinary moments. Notice the urge to interrupt someone in conversation. Pause and see if it comes from craving for attention. Notice the impulse to buy something unnecessary. Pause and see if it comes from restlessness. Notice the certainty that your view is the only truth. Pause and see if it may be delusion. Each pause is a step toward freedom. Each pause drains a little more poison from the stream. Over time, this practice reveals that the poisons are not random. They arise from causes. They follow patterns. They are not fixed flaws, but conditions that can be understood and changed. The Buddha mapped this in the teaching of dependent origination, the chain of causes that leads from ignorance to suffering. When we see this chain clearly, we see that the poisons are not permanent parts of us. They are links in a process. And if they are links, they can be broken. This is the doorway we now approach, to look deeply into dependent origination, to trace how suffering arises step by step, and to discover how freedom becomes possible at any point in the chain. By draining the poisons, we have cleared the water. Now we are ready to see what lies beneath the surface. The journey continues. Why do we repeat the same emotional patterns again and again? Why does fear return even after we think we've conquered it? Or why does anger flare even when we promised ourselves we would stay calm? To answer this, the Buddha offered one of his most profound teachings, dependent origination. At its heart, it reveals that nothing in life arises on its own. Every experience, every emotion, every moment of suffering is conditioned. It has a cause. And if something has a cause, it also has the possibility of ending. Imagine a chain of 12 links. Each link represents a condition that gives rise to the next. At the beginning lies ignorance, not seeing things as they truly are. From ignorance comes habitual actions, patterns of thought and behavior that we repeat without awareness. These patterns shape consciousness, coloring how we perceive the world. From this arises name and form, the way we label and identify ourselves. Feelings follow, which lead to craving. Craving gives birth to clinging. Clinging leads to becoming, the creation of identities and stories about who we are. From this comes birth, and inevitably, suffering, decay, and death. At first glance, this chain may seem abstract. But when we look closely at our own lives, we see it everywhere. Take a simple example. Someone criticizes you. Ignorance appears when we fail to see that the criticism is just words, not a fixed truth about us. From ignorance, a habit forms. We replay the words, ruminating on them. Consciousness latches on, making the criticism feel like the whole of reality. Name and form arise. I am a failure. I am not good enough. Feelings of shame and anger flood in. From these feelings comes craving. I want to be liked. I want to be respected. Craving leads to clinging. We hold desperately to the idea of being seen as perfect. This clinging fuels becoming. We try to prove ourselves, to change others' perceptions, to build a stronger identity. And so, suffering multiplies. A single criticism turns into days of inner turmoil. Dependent origination shows us that suffering is not random. It is constructed step by step. This is both sobering and liberating. Sobering because it reveals how deeply ingrained our patterns are. Liberating because it shows that the chain can be broken. If suffering is built link by link, then freedom is found by interrupting the chain. We cannot always stop the first arrow of the initial criticism, the painful moment. But we can stop the second, third, and 10th arrows that follow. Mindfulness is the tool that helps us notice the chain in action. The moment we catch ourselves saying, I am a failure, we pause. We ask, is this a fact, or is this just a story my mind is telling? In that pause, the link of clinging weakens. Or when craving arises, I must fix this. I must be seen as good. We breathe. We remember impermanence. We let the craving pass. In doing so, we interrupt the cycle. Suffering dissolves, not because the outer event changes, but because we no longer feed the inner chain. There is a story of a meditator who struggled with anger. Every time someone insulted him, he would explode. His teacher asked him to watch the process carefully. The next time anger arose, the meditator noticed. First came the feeling of hurt, then the thought, they should not speak to me this way, then the craving for respect, then the clinging to his image of himself as honorable, then the burst of anger. By slowing down, he saw each link clearly. And once he saw the links, he realized he had a choice. He could let the feeling pass, without adding the story. Slowly, his anger lost its grip. This is the power of seeing dependent origination in real time. Modern life makes the chain even more visible. Consider how often anxiety is fueled not by reality, but by imagined futures. You feel a sensation in your body, a tightness in your chest. Ignorance interprets it as danger. Habitual patterns rush in. Something is wrong. What if I'm sick? Consciousness fixates and identity forms. I am fragile. I cannot handle this. Feelings of fear multiply. Craving arises. I must be safe. I must get rid of this feeling. Clinging takes hold. You search endlessly online for answers, reinforcing the fear. Becoming arises. You live as if the fear defines you. And soon, suffering grows, even though the initial sensation may have been harmless. This teaching is not meant to overwhelm us with complexity. It is meant to shine a light. When we see how suffering is built, we see that it is not permanent. It is constructed, and what is constructed can be deconstructed. Awareness is the tool of deconstruction. Every time we choose not to follow a thought, every time we let go of a craving, every time we question a belief, we loosen the links of the chain. Dependent origination also reveals the illusion of the self. We often believe that we are fixed beings with solid identities. But when we trace the chain, we see that what we call self is just a series of conditions. Ignorance gives rise to habit. Habit gives rise to consciousness. Consciousness gives rise to labels. Labels give rise to craving. The self is not a permanent entity. It is a process. This insight can be unsettling, but it is also freeing. If the self is a process, then we are not trapped. We can change. We can let go. We can find freedom. The Buddha once said that to see dependent origination is to see the Dharma, the truth of how life unfolds. And to see the Dharma is to see freedom. For once we understand how suffering is created, we no longer believe it is unchangeable. We no longer see ourselves as victims of fate. We become participants in our own liberation. This is the beginning of exploring dependent origination, seeing that suffering is not random, but conditioned, and that awareness allows us to interrupt the cycle. But this doorway goes even deeper. To truly transform, we must not only see the chain, but learn to unravel it step by step, breaking the habits that keep us bound. That is where we will go next. The beauty of dependent origination is that it shows us suffering is not inevitable. Each link in the chain is like a doorway. At any doorway, we can choose to step aside, to break the cycle. Even if ignorance arises, even if craving has appeared, we can pause, breathe, and shift. The cycle only continues when we remain unaware. Awareness is like a light switched on in a dark room. Suddenly, we see that we do not have to keep walking into the same walls. Consider the link of feeling. A sensation arises pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Without awareness, we react automatically. Pleasant feelings spark craving. Unpleasant feelings spark aversion. Neutral feelings spark restlessness, a search for stimulation. But with mindfulness, we can meet feelings with equanimity. A pleasant sensation is simply pleasant. We need not cling. An unpleasant sensation is simply unpleasant. We need not resist. Neutral sensations are simply neutral. We need not chase after distraction. In this way, the link of feeling becomes a place of freedom rather than a trap. Another doorway is craving. The mind whispers, "If only I had this, I would be happy. If only this would go away, I would be at peace." Craving feels urgent, undeniable. Yet if we pause and look directly at it, we see that craving is just a thought, a sensation, a wave passing through. It promises relief, but rarely delivers. By observing craving without feeding it, we discover that it dissolves on its own. Each time we let a craving pass, the link of clinging weakens. The chain loses strength. Clinging itself offers another opportunity. Clinging is when we grip tightly, refusing to let go. We cling to possessions, roles, people, ideas. But clinging is not the object. It is the hand that grips. When we notice clinging, we can open the hand. We can remember impermanence. We can trust that letting go is not loss, but liberation. The hand that opens discovers it is lighter, freer, more spacious. Even at the level of becoming, there is choice. Becoming is the identity we construct from clinging. I am a failure. I am a success. I am broken. I am strong. These identities may feel solid, but they are built from stories. If we see them clearly, we realize they are not the whole truth. We are not fixed beings. We are flowing processes. The stories lose their power. We become less bound by who we think we must be and more open to who we are in this moment. Buddha often used the image of a fire to describe craving and clinging. Desire, aversion, and delusion are flames that consume us. But when we stop feeding the fire with fuel, it naturally goes out. This is nirvana, the extinguishing of the flames. Dependent origination is the map that shows us where the fuel enters, and awareness is the hand that chooses to stop feeding it. In modern life, dependent origination is not just philosophy. It is practical. Think about how often cycles repeat. A person feels lonely, feeling. They crave comfort, craving. They cling to distraction, scrolling, shopping, eating, clinging. They build an identity. I am unlovable. I am broken, becoming. The cycle reinforces itself again and again. But imagine the same moment approached with awareness. The person feels loneliness. They name it. This is loneliness. They breathe. They let the craving for distraction arise and pass. Instead of clinging to the story, they offer compassion. I am human. Loneliness comes and goes. The cycle weakens. Suffering softens. This is the liberation dependent origination offers, not the promise of a life without pain, but the power to meet pain without multiplying it. To see the links clearly is to see that freedom is always available. Here now, in the pause between craving and clinging, in the breath between feeling and reaction. One teacher compared dependent origination to a wheel spinning through lifetimes. As long as ignorance and craving fuel the wheel, it turns, carrying us through cycles of suffering. But the moment we remove the fuel, the wheel slows, and eventually, it stops. This does not mean life ends. It means suffering ends. It means we can live fully, present in each moment, without being chained to the endless cycle of dissatisfaction. To live with this understanding is to live with clarity. It does not mean we never feel pain. It means we no longer mistake pain for punishment, nor do we believe it must rule us. It means we see emotions as processes, not identities. It means we meet life with curiosity instead of panic, with openness instead of grasping. And as clarity deepens, another quality begins to grow: equanimity. Equanimity is the calm balance that comes from seeing the rise and fall of all things. It is the fruit of understanding dependent origination. Once we see that everything arises from causes and passes away, we no longer cling desperately to pleasure or recoil fiercely from pain. We meet life with steady openness. This does not make us cold or detached. It makes us free. As we close the doorway of dependent origination, we step toward equanimity itself. The next part of our journey will explore this balance, the heart that remains steady in joy and sorrow, success and loss, union and separation. The doorway opens now into that still center, the place where peace no longer depends on conditions. Equanimity is one of the most misunderstood qualities in spiritual life. Some imagine it as coldness, a kind of indifference that feels distant and detached. But true equanimity is nothing like that. It is not the absence of feeling, but the presence of wisdom. It is the calm balance that comes from seeing clearly the nature of life. It allows us to feel joy without clinging, to feel sorrow without collapsing, to walk through change without being broken. Far from being cold, equanimity is warm, steady, and deeply alive. To understand equanimity, imagine a great tree standing in a field. Storms may shake its branches, winds may howl, rain may fall, yet the roots hold firm. The tree bends, but does not break. Equanimity is those roots. It anchors us so that when life's storms arrive, and they always do, we can sway without falling. We still feel the winds. We still hear the thunder, but we remain grounded in clarity and balance. Modern life makes equanimity rare. We are taught to chase after pleasure and to run from pain. We celebrate highs and despair at lows, as if life should only give us one side of the coin. But reality is both, gain and loss, praise and blame, success and failure, pleasure and pain. These pairs will always rise and fall like the tides. Equanimity is the ability to meet both without being enslaved by either. When joy comes, we savor it fully but do not cling. When sorrow comes, we feel it deeply but do not drown. In this way, equanimity brings freedom in the midst of change. Consider how equanimity changes relationships. Without it, we may love with desperation, clinging tightly to others, fearing their departure. With equanimity, we love freely, without trying to possess. We see that everyone is on their own path, and we offer care without demand. This does not make love weaker. It makes it pure. Love without equanimity is often entangled with fear. Love with equanimity is fearless. It gives without calculation, because it does not depend on outcome. Equanimity also transforms how we face criticism and praise. Without it, we ride the roller coaster of others' opinions. Praise lifts us into pride. Criticism drops us into despair. With equanimity, we still hear both, but they do not define us. Praise is simply pleasant sound. Criticism is simply unpleasant sound. Neither touches the core of who we are. Equanimity gives us the courage to act with integrity, guided by values rather than applause. The Buddha often described equanimity as the immeasurable quality, alongside loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy. These four together form the boundless heart. Loving kindness wishes well for all beings. Compassion responds to suffering. Sympathetic joy delights in others' happiness. And equanimity holds them all in balance, ensuring that love does not turn into attachment. Compassion does not turn into overwhelm. Joy does not turn into envy. Equanimity is the steady vessel that carries the boundless heart across the waves of life. There is a story from the Buddhist tradition of a farmer whose crops were destroyed by drought. He grieved but accepted, planting again when the rains returned. Another year, his crops flourished beyond measure. He rejoiced but did not grow arrogant, knowing the cycle would shift again. This steady balance allowed him to work diligently without being consumed by either despair or pride. His neighbors called him lucky, but he was not lucky. He was free. His freedom came from equanimity. In practice, equanimity begins with awareness of impermanence. Everything changes: emotions, relationships, successes, failures. When we cling, we suffer because we resist this truth. Equanimity is the willingness to ride the river of change without grabbing at the banks. It does not mean we feel nothing. It means we stop demanding that feelings last forever. We let them come, we let them go. Like waves rising and falling, each moment is met, then released. One way to cultivate equanimity is through meditation on the pairs of opposites: gain and loss, praise and blame, pleasure and pain, success and failure. We reflect, These come and go. They are not permanent. They do not define me. By repeating this reflection, the heart slowly loosens its grip. When gain arrives, we are grateful but not consumed. When loss arrives, we grieve but do not collapse. This balance is not denial. It is maturity. It is the strength to face reality without being broken by it. Equanimity also requires compassion for ourselves. Many people mistake equanimity for suppression, forcing ourselves not to feel. But that only adds tension. True equanimity allows feelings to arise fully, without resistance and without clinging. When grief comes, we allow the tears. When joy comes, we allow the laughter. But we do not chain ourselves to either. We trust that both will pass. Compassion ensures that this balance is gentle, not rigid. Imagine watching clouds pass across the sky. You do not try to grab them, nor do you push them away. You simply watch. This is equanimity. The sky does not resist the storm, nor does it cling to the sunlight. It holds both, and in doing so, it remains vast and open, untouched by the passing weather. Our minds can become that sky. Our hearts can become that space. Equanimity is especially powerful when facing injustice or suffering in the world. Without it, we may burn out from anger or collapse into despair. With equanimity, we still care deeply, but we act from clarity, not reactivity. We fight for justice with courage, but without hatred. We respond to suffering with compassion, but without drowning in sorrow. Equanimity allows us to serve the world steadily, without being consumed by it. This is the first step into equanimity, seeing it not as coldness, but as balance. Not as detachment, but as freedom. It is the steady ground beneath our feet, the deep root of the tree, the open sky above storms. To walk further into this quality is to discover how it changes not only our inner world, but the very way we live each day, how we work, how we love, how we face death itself. That is where we will go next. Equanimity, when lived fully, becomes more than a practice. It becomes a way of being. It does not mean we rise above the world like untouchable statues. It means we walk through the world with open eyes, open hearts, and steady steps. Joy still arrives, and we celebrate it. Pain still comes, and we allow it. But neither defines us, neither binds us. Equanimity gives us the strength to stay present, no matter what arises. Think of how equanimity changes the workplace. Without it, a single failure can feel like the end of the world, while a single success can inflate us into arrogance. With equanimity, both success and failure are seen as temporary conditions, lessons on the path. We work diligently, but we do not collapse when results shift. We treat colleagues with patience, even when tensions flare, because we see that their moods are also impermanent. Equanimity brings professionalism that is not cold, but deeply grounded in family life. Equanimity is equally transformative. Children grow, partners change, parents age. Without equanimity, we cling desperately to who they were, resenting who they have become. With equanimity, we accept their growth, their mistakes, their humanity. We love them not for staying the same, but for being themselves. This does not mean we stop guiding or caring. It means we stop demanding permanence in a world of change. Love becomes freer, lighter, more patient. Equanimity also reshapes how we face illness and aging. The body inevitably shifts. Without equanimity, each wrinkle feels like a tragedy, each ache like a threat. With equanimity, we recognize these changes as part of the natural flow. We care for the body with kindness, but we do not confuse it with our identity. We grieve loss of ability, but we do not despair. Instead, we find dignity in acceptance, strength in presence. There is a story of a monk who was asked how he remained calm in the face of constant criticism. He replied, "When someone speaks harshly, I ask myself, is it true? If it is true, I learn. If it is not true, I let it go. Either way, why should I be disturbed? This is equanimity. It does not mean indifference to truth. It means openness to learning without being enslaved by praise or blame. Equanimity does not eliminate grief or joy. When a loved one dies, the heart still aches. When a child is born, the heart still rejoices. The difference is that equanimity holds both with wisdom. It allows us to grieve without being shattered, to rejoice without clinging. It teaches us that love and loss are not opposites, but companions. To love deeply is to risk loss. To accept loss is to honor love. Equanimity is the bridge between the two. To cultivate equanimity, we begin small. Notice the rise of irritation in traffic, the pull of pride after a compliment, the sinking feeling after criticism. Pause, breathe, remind yourself, this too will pass. At first, the mind will resist, still pulled into reaction. But with practice, the pause grows longer, the breath steadier, the wisdom clearer. Equanimity is not built in a single meditation. It is built in countless small moments of balance. Meditation on compassion also supports equanimity. Sometimes, equanimity can feel distant, as if it makes us uncaring. But when paired with compassion, it becomes vibrant. We care deeply, but we do not collapse under the weight of care. Imagine a doctor tending to patients. Without equanimity, compassion might lead to burnout, overwhelmed by endless suffering. With equanimity, compassion flows steadily, sustainable over a lifetime. Equanimity does not reduce love. It protects it. There is also the reflection on the 8 worldly winds: gain and loss, praise and blame, pleasure and pain, success and failure. These winds blow through every life. No one escapes them. Equanimity is the sail that allows us to navigate without capsizing. We may feel the winds, but we do not let them dictate our course. We steer with wisdom, not reaction. This reflection helps us remember that we are not alone in facing change. Every being is touched by the winds. Seeing this universality deepens both our compassion and our balance. Asterisk, as equanimity matures, it transforms fear. Many fears are born from resistance to impermanence. Fear of losing health, wealth, relationships, even life itself. Equanimity teaches us to look directly at impermanence, to embrace it as the nature of existence. This is not pessimism. It is realism infused with peace. By accepting impermanence, we release the futile struggle to control what cannot be controlled. And in that release, we find freedom. Equanimity is the quiet strength of a mountain, the soft openness of the sky, the steady flow of the river. It is not dramatic, yet it is powerful. Without it, we are tossed endlessly by the waves of life. With it, we remain steady, grounded, free. And as we deepen in equanimity, we prepare ourselves for the greatest test of impermanence, death itself. The next doorway invites us to face what most of us avoid, the truth that life will end, that everything we know will pass. To look at death directly is not to lose hope, but to find a freedom and courage greater than fear. With equanimity as our root, we are ready to step through this doorway into the reality of death and impermanence. Death is the greatest silence in human life, and yet it is also the greatest source of fear. We avoid speaking of it. We turn away when it appears. We cover it with euphemisms. And yet, no matter how much we resist, death remains the one certainty. Every living being is walking toward it, step by step. The body will age. Loved ones will leave. Our own breath will one day cease. This truth is heavy and for many, unbearable. But the Buddha taught that freedom is found not by avoiding death, but by facing it directly. In modern life, death is often hidden away. Hospitals and institutions take the place of home care. Funerals are rushed, grief is minimized, and the pace of daily life demands we move on quickly. As a result, death becomes foreign, almost unreal, until it comes crashing into our lives through loss. Then, the fear is overwhelming. We wonder, what will happen to me? What will happen to those I love? How can I bear the loss? Beneath this fear lies our resistance to impermanence. We want life to stay the same. We want the people we love to remain forever. But life does not follow our wants. It follows its own rhythm, one of arising and passing, birth and death, gain and loss. The Buddha called this the great truth of impermanence. Everything changes. Flowers bloom and wither. Seasons shift. Bodies are born, grow, decay, and die. Even mountains, which seem eternal, eventually erode. Nothing escapes impermanence. To deny this truth is to live in illusion. To accept it is to begin to find peace. For when we accept that everything passes, we stop clinging so desperately. We learn to love fully in the moment, knowing it is precious because it will not last. There is a story of a woman named Kisagotami whose child died suddenly. She was inconsolable, carrying the body of her child from house to house, begging for medicine to bring him back. Finally, she came to the Buddha. He told her, "Bring me a mustard seed from a household where no one has died." Desperate, she went door to door, but every household had known loss. She realized she was not alone. Death touches every family, every being. Her grief did not vanish, but it softened in the light of shared humanity. She buried her child and entered the path of wisdom. This story reminds us that death is not personal punishment. It is the universal law of life. Facing death changes the way we live. When we forget impermanence, we waste time on trivial conflicts, endless craving, and restless distraction. We believe we have unlimited days, so we delay what matters most: love, forgiveness, compassion. But when we remember that life is fragile, we begin to live differently. We speak words of kindness while there is still time. We release grudges, knowing tomorrow is not promised. We savor the small joys, because each one is fleeting. Awareness of death does not darken life. It illuminates it. It makes every moment shine with urgency and meaning. Meditation on death is a powerful Buddhist practice. It is not meant to frighten us, but to awaken us. We reflect, this body will age. This body will sicken. This body will die. At first, the mind resists. But with time, we discover a strange freedom. When we accept death, fear loosens. We stop living in denial. We stop clinging to the illusion of permanence. Instead, we live with courage. Each breath becomes a gift. Each day becomes sacred. Death no longer paralyzes us. It becomes a teacher, reminding us to live fully now. One monk described it this way: "When I remember death, my heart becomes soft. Small irritations no longer matter. I do not wish to waste time in anger. I wish to spend my days in kindness." This is the gift of death awareness. It strips away illusions, leaving only what truly matters. In the West, death often feels like an enemy. But in Buddhist wisdom, death is part of the cycle, neither enemy nor friend. It is the natural unfolding of life. To resist it is to suffer twice, once in fear and again in loss. To accept it is to suffer only once, and even then with clarity. Acceptance does not mean we feel nothing. It means we grieve without despair, we love without clinging, and we die without regret. There is an image often used in Buddhist texts. Life is like riding on water. Each moment appears, ripples, and fades. Death is not the end of something permanent. It is the continuation of change, the dissolving of one form into another. When we see life this way, death loses some of its terror. We realize we are part of a vast process, not separate, not alone. Modern anxiety about death often comes from the desire for control. We want to know exactly what will happen. We want guarantees, but life offers none. The Buddha did not ask us to cling to beliefs about afterlife or eternity. He asked us to meet the reality of impermanence here and now, to see that freedom comes not from knowing what happens after death, but from living wisely before it. This is the first step into the doorway of death and impermanence, facing the reality that life is fragile, that all things pass, and that acceptance brings peace. But to go deeper, we must learn how to transform fear into gratitude, how to turn awareness of impermanence into love, and how to prepare the heart not only for our own death, but for the losses we will face along the way. That is where we turn next. To live with the awareness of death is not to live in despair, but to live in truth. The truth of impermanence is not meant to paralyze us. It is meant to awaken us. Imagine living each day as if it might be your last, not in panic, but in clarity. Suddenly, the small frustrations lose their power. The arguments that seemed so important fade. What remains is love. What remains is presence. What remains is the desire to live kindly, because kindness endures even when bodies fall away. There is a story of a monk who meditated daily in a graveyard. When asked why, he replied, "Because the bones remind me of my own." Each skull was once filled with thoughts, plans, worries. Now it rests silently. Remembering this, I stopped clinging to thoughts as if they were permanent. I live more freely, more gently. This reflection is not morbid. It is liberating. It teaches us that what we fear most is also what makes life precious. Death does not diminish life. It intensifies it. When we embrace impermanence, gratitude naturally blossoms. A meal becomes sacred because it will be eaten only once. A conversation becomes precious because tomorrow it may not return. A sunrise glows brighter when we remember it will never appear in the same way again. Gratitude is the natural response to impermanence. When we cling to permanence, we feel entitled. When we embrace impermanence, we feel grateful. Impermanence also teaches us about forgiveness. Why hold on to grudges when time is short? Why carry resentment when tomorrow is uncertain? Forgiveness does not erase the past, but it frees the heart in the present. It allows us to walk lighter, to love more openly, to meet death without regret. In this way, impermanence becomes not only a reminder of loss, but a call to release what weighs us down. The fear of death often comes from identification with the body. We think, this body is me. When it dies, I will end. But Buddhist teaching reminds us that the body is not the self. The body changes every day. Cells die and regenerate, hair grows and falls, skin ages. Which version of the body is me? None of them. The self is not fixed in the body. It is a process, a flow of conditions. To see this truth is to loosen fear. The body will die, but what we call self was never a solid thing to begin with. Another aspect of fear comes from attachment to those we love. We think, I cannot bear to lose them. This is natural. Love brings vulnerability. But here too, impermanence can soften fear. When we accept that everyone we love will one day die, we begin to love differently. We hold them with more tenderness. We waste less time in conflict. We cherish the moments we share. Love deepens, not by pretending loss will never come, but by embracing it as part of the gift. There is a story of a king who asked his wise advisor for a phrase that would be true in every situation. The advisor replied, "This too shall pass." The king was pleased at first, but then troubled. If joy passes, why celebrate? If sorrow passes, why grieve? The advisor smiled, because knowing both will pass allows you to live fully. You enjoy joy without clinging, and you endure sorrow without despair. This phrase captures the essence of impermanence. It is not meant to diminish life, but to teach balance. In daily practice, we can cultivate awareness of impermanence through small reflections. Notice a flower bloom and remind yourself it will wither. Taste a meal and remind yourself the flavor will fade. Watch a child grow and remind yourself the moment will not return. At first, this may feel sad, but over time, it fills the heart with reverence. Nothing is guaranteed, so everything is precious. This is how impermanence transforms fear into love. When it comes to our own death, the greatest gift we can offer ourselves is preparation. Not preparation in terms of control, but in terms of acceptance. To reflect daily, I will die. I do not know when. I cannot control how, but I can choose how I live now. Such reflection strips away illusions. It makes us kinder, braver, more present. It allows us to meet death when it comes, not as a thief, but as a companion, the natural closing of a chapter. Death awareness also prepares us for the losses we face along the way. When loved ones die, grief is natural. Equanimity does not remove tears, but awareness of impermanence helps us to grieve without collapsing. We remember that death is part of life, that love does not vanish with the body, that compassion endures even through loss. We honor the dead not by denying death, but by living fully in their memory. In this way, impermanence becomes a path to freedom. It teaches us that clinging is futile, that denial is suffering, and that acceptance is peace. It shows us that life is fragile, but that fragility makes it beautiful. It calls us to love more deeply, forgive more quickly, and live more wisely. Death, once feared as the great enemy, becomes the great teacher. And yet, to live with impermanence fully requires another step, letting go. Awareness of death and change shows us the futility of clinging. But how do we release our grip on possessions, roles, identities, and expectations? How do we let go, not only in thought, but in practice? This is the next doorway, the art of release, the path of surrender, the freedom of opening the hand. The journey continues. Letting go is one of the simplest teachings of the Buddha, yet also one of the hardest to practice. We hear the words and nod in agreement, but when it comes time to loosen our grip, the hand refuses to open. We cling to possessions, to people, to identities, to ideas. We cling even when the clinging hurts us. Why? Because letting go feels like loss. It feels like giving up control, like falling into emptiness. And yet, the truth is the opposite. Letting go is not loss. Letting go is freedom. Imagine holding a rope that is burning your hands. The tighter you cling, the more pain you feel. But you cannot imagine releasing it because you think the rope is your lifeline. The Buddha's teaching is clear. The rope is not saving you. It is harming you. Release does not mean falling. It means healing. It means freedom from pain you never needed to endure. We cling to possessions, believing they define us. The house, the car, the clothes, the titles. But possessions come and go. They can be lost in a fire, stolen, or simply decay with time. When we build our identity on them, we build on sand. Letting go does not mean we live without anything. It means we stop mistaking possessions for self. We use them with gratitude, but we do not let them use us. We also cling to people. We tell ourselves, I cannot live without them. We grasp at relationships, fearing their change or loss. But love and clinging are not the same. Love is open, generous, willing to let the other grow. Clinging is tight, fearful, desperate to control. Love brings peace. Clinging brings suffering. Letting go in relationships does not mean abandoning care. It means loving without chains, giving without demanding, holding with open hands. Then there is the clinging to identity. We say, I am this kind of person. I cannot change. This is who I must always be. But the self is not fixed. It is a process, a river, not a stone. When we cling to fixed identities, we suffer each time life asks us to grow. The parent who clings to being needed suffers when children leave. The worker who clings to a career suffers when it ends. The person who clings to youth suffers as the body ages. Letting go means allowing ourselves to evolve. It means trusting that we are more than any single role. We cling even to ideas and beliefs. This is the only truth. This is the only way. I must be right. This clinging creates division, conflict, war. The Buddha did not ask us to cling even to his teachings. He said they are like a raft useful for crossing the river, but not to be carried forever on your back. Letting go means being willing to question, to learn, to remain open. It means not confusing the finger pointing at the moon with the moon itself. The practice of letting go begins with awareness. Notice when the hand grips tightly. Notice the tension in the body, the fear in the heart. Ask, what am I clinging to? What do I fear will happen if I release this? Often, we discover that the fear is only a story. We believe release means emptiness. But in truth, release makes space. It opens the hand to receive more. The moment we let go, we breathe easier. There is a story of two monks crossing a river. One carried a woman across, breaking a rule. Hours later, the other monk burst out, "Why did you do that?" "You broke your vow." The first monk replied, "I set her down at the riverbank." "Why are you still carrying her?" This story shows how we cling not only to possessions or people, but to memories, to judgments, to old wounds. Letting go means setting them down. The past cannot be changed, but we can release our grip on it. In modern life, letting go often means releasing the illusion of control. We schedule, plan, prepare, and believe we can guarantee outcomes. But life rarely follows our plans. The tighter we cling to control, the more anxiety grows. Letting go means trusting the flow of life. It does not mean passivity. It means doing our best with clarity, then releasing the rest. It means planting seeds with care, but not demanding the harvest appear on our schedule. Letting go also means releasing the inner critic. Many of us cling to harsh self-judgment, believing it will push us to improve. But criticism rarely brings growth. It brings shame and paralysis. Letting go of the critic does not mean we stop learning. It means we guide ourselves with compassion instead of cruelty. We become our own friend rather than our own jailer. This is the first step into the doorway of letting go, seeing how clinging creates suffering and how release creates space. But to walk further, we must learn not only to release in thought, but to practice release in every part of life possessions, relationships, identities, and even the teachings themselves. That is where we turn next. Letting go deepens as we move from the surface to the core of our lives. At first, we practice with small things, old clothes, outdated habits, resentments from the past. Each act of release feels lighter, freer. But as practice matures, life asks us to let go of deeper attachments, roles we built our identity around, relationships we believed would never change, even the very sense of control over our lives. These deeper releases are not easy. They may feel like tearing away parts of ourselves. Yet when we surrender, we discover that nothing essential is ever lost. What falls away is illusion. What remains is truth. Consider the parent whose children have grown and left home. The clinging voice whispers, "I am no longer needed. Who am I without them?" Letting go means accepting that love is not diminished when roles shift. The bond remains, though its form changes. In releasing the old identity, space opens for a new chapter mentor, friend, elder. Life is not ending. It is transforming. Consider the worker who loses a career. Clinging says, I am my job. Without it, I am nothing. Letting go reveals that identity is not confined to one role. Worth is not measured only in titles or tasks. Release makes space for new expressions of purpose, new ways of serving, new ways of being. What seemed like loss becomes opportunity. Even in grief, letting go carries power. To lose a loved one is one of life's deepest pains. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It means releasing the demand that they remain. It means allowing love to exist without possession. The heart still aches, but the ache becomes a form of remembrance, a sign of how deeply we cared. In release, love becomes timeless. The Buddha's teaching of the raft is a profound reminder. He said his teachings are like a raft used to cross a river. Once the other shore is reached, the raft is no longer needed. To carry it on the back would be a burden. In the same way, even the Dharma is not meant for clinging. It is meant for crossing. Letting go includes letting go of the very path once it has served its purpose. True freedom is not in holding tightly, but in walking unburdened in daily life. Practice can be simple yet powerful. When anger arises, let go of the story that fuels it. When craving arises, let go of the belief that fulfillment lies in the next thing. When fear arises, let go of the illusion of control. Each act of release may feel small, but together they weave a life of freedom. There is a story of a monk who lived in a tiny hut. One day, thieves came and stole everything. The monk sat outside, watching. When they left, he said softly, "If only I could give them the moon." He had nothing left, yet he was free. This story is not about poverty. It is about freedom from clinging. When nothing can be taken, nothing can imprison us. Letting go is not about detachment from life. It is about engaging fully without chains. We still love, but we do not cling. We still act, but we do not demand. We still dream, but we do not collapse when dreams shift. Letting go allows us to live with open hands, open hearts, open eyes. As the practice deepens, we begin to see that letting go is not a single act, but a way of living. Every breath is letting go, the in-breath taken in, the out-breath released. Life itself is a rhythm of holding and releasing. To resist this rhythm is to suffer. To flow with it is to be free. And so, the path of letting go prepares us for the final doorway. For what is the heart of the Buddhist journey, if not the ultimate release, the release of illusion, the release of clinging, the release of suffering itself? The next and final step is the doorway of awakening, where letting go becomes complete and freedom becomes the ground of life. The journey continues. Awakening is a word that carries many meanings. Some imagine it as a mystical flash, a sudden vision of light. Others think of it as the end of all problems, a state of bliss untouched by sorrow. But in Buddhist wisdom, awakening is both simpler and deeper. It is the clear seeing of reality as it truly is. It is the release of clinging, the dissolving of illusions, the freedom to live with an open heart and steady mind in the midst of life's impermanence. Awakening is not escape from life. It is intimacy with life. The Buddha described awakening as the extinguishing of the fires of craving, aversion, and delusion. These fires are the roots of suffering. They burn in the mind, consuming peace, leaving restlessness and dissatisfaction. Awakening is like pouring cool water on these flames. It is not the annihilation of the person, but the ending of the poisons. What remains is clarity, compassion, and equanimity. To understand awakening, imagine waking from a dream. In the dream, you may feel fear, joy, confusion. The dream seems real until you open your eyes. Then you realize it was only a projection of the mind. Awakening is like this. We wake from the dream of permanence, the dream of fixed self, the dream that happiness lies in endless craving. We see reality clearly. All is impermanent. All is interconnected. The self is not fixed. Peace is found not in clinging, but in release. The seeing transforms everything. Problems may still arise, illness, loss, conflict, but they are no longer prisons. They are waves on the surface of a vast ocean. We no longer drown in them because we know the depth beneath. The awakened mind is vast like the ocean, steady like the mountain, open like the sky. Awakening also means living with compassion that knows no boundaries. When the illusion of separateness dissolves, we see that our suffering is not separate from the suffering of others. We see that every being longs for peace, safety, love. Compassion flows naturally, not as duty, but as recognition. To help another is to help oneself. To harm another is to harm oneself. Awakening unites wisdom and compassion into a single path. There is a story of the Buddha after his awakening. For 7 days, he sat beneath the Bodhi tree, gazing at the world with eyes of compassion. He had seen suffering clearly, seen its cause, and seen the path to its end. Yet he did not turn away. He did not retreat into silence forever. He chose to teach, to share the way, because compassion naturally arises from awakening. Wisdom without compassion is incomplete. Compassion without wisdom is blind. Together, they form the awakened life. In modern terms, awakening is not an unreachable ideal. It is the possibility of living with clarity in each moment. Each time we see impermanence clearly, we taste awakening. Each time we let go of craving, we taste awakening. Each time we act with compassion instead of hatred, we taste awakening. These are not small moments. They are glimpses of freedom. Awakening is not only at the end of the path. It is available in each step. The awakened mind sees that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. It no longer demands guarantees. It no longer resists change. It no longer clings to identity. It rests in presence, open to each breath, each sound, each touch. This presence is not passive. It is alive, engaged, radiant. It allows us to meet joy with gratitude, sorrow with tenderness, and uncertainty with courage. This is the first step into the final doorway. Awakening as clear seeing, as freedom from illusion, as compassion in action. But to walk further, we must explore what it means to live awakening in daily life, not only in meditation, but in work, family, love, and service. Awakening must move from the cushion to the marketplace, from the silence of retreat to the noise of the world. That is where we turn next. Awakening may sound like the end of the path, but in truth, it is also the beginning of a new way of living. To awaken is not to withdraw from the world. It is to enter it more fully, with eyes open and heart free. The awakened life is not lived in a distant monastery alone. It can be lived in the marketplace, in the office, in the home. Wherever there is breath, there is the possibility of freedom. What does this look like in daily life? In work, awakening means integrity. It means choosing actions guided not only by profit or recognition, but by compassion and clarity. We work with diligence, but without being enslaved by results. Success and failure are met with balance. Colleagues are met with patience. The mind remains steady, the heart remains kind. Work becomes not just a means of survival, but a field for practice, a place where compassion and wisdom are embodied. In family life, awakening means presence. It means listening deeply without distraction, seeing loved ones as they truly are, not as we wish them to be. It means guiding children with compassion without clinging to control. It means honoring partners with respect without demanding they never change. It means caring for elders with tenderness, recognizing the impermanence of each moment together. The awakened heart loves without chains, grieves without despair, rejoices without clinging. In society, awakening means responsibility. It means recognizing that suffering is not just individual, but collective. Systems of greed, hatred, and delusion shape the world. To live awakening is to respond, not with rage or apathy, but with wise action. It may mean standing for justice, offering service, caring for the vulnerable. Always with compassion, always with balance. Awakening does not withdraw from suffering. It seeks to heal it, one act of kindness at a time. The awakened life is not free from difficulty. Illness still comes, losses still occur, death still arrives. But awakening transforms our relationship with them. Instead of panic, there is acceptance. Instead of despair, there is clarity. Instead of resistance, there is peace. Pain may remain, but suffering diminishes, because suffering was always born of clinging. When clinging dissolves, even in the face of pain, freedom shines. Awakening also means humility. It is not a badge to wear, not an identity to cling to. To say, "I am awakened," is to fall back into illusion. True awakening is silent, spacious, without need for proclamation. It shows itself not in words, but in presence. In the calm of one who does not cling. In the compassion of one who sees others as oneself. In the joy of one who finds beauty in impermanence. There is a story of a monk asked, "What do you do after awakening?" He replied, "I chop wood. I carry water." The point was not that nothing changes, but that everything changes in how we meet it. Ordinary tasks are no longer burdens. They become expressions of freedom. The awakened life is not about extraordinary experiences. It is about living the ordinary with extraordinary clarity. In this way, awakening is not distant. It is here. It is now. Each breath is a chance to see clearly. Each step is a chance to release clinging. Each moment is a chance to act with compassion. The path is not about reaching somewhere else. It is about awakening here in the very life we are living. And so, our journey through suffering, stress, money, relationships, anxiety, poisons of the mind, dependent origination, equanimity, death, letting go, and awakening leads us to this truth. Freedom is possible. Not in some distant heaven, not in some future lifetime, but in the present moment. Freedom is not escape from life. It is intimacy with life, lived with open eyes and open heart. As we close this journey, remember, the teachings are not to be held like treasures in a box. They are to be lived. Each day is an opportunity to practice breathing with awareness, acting with compassion, meeting impermanence with courage, releasing clinging with trust. The path is not linear. It is alive, unfolding in each moment. The Buddha's final words to his disciples were simple. All things are impermanent. Strive with diligence. This is the essence of awakening. See impermanence clearly. Live with compassion. Practice with steady heart. Do not wait for tomorrow. Freedom is here now, in this very breath. And so, the journey ends where it began, in the human heart. Longing for peace, longing for release, longing for freedom. The path has been walked, the doors have been opened. The invitation remains to live awake, to live free, to live with love that does not cling, wisdom that does not waver, and compassion that knows no bounds. This is awakening. This is freedom. This is the gift of the path. We have walked together through many doorways. We began with the raw pain of stress, the endless weight of modern life. We saw how money, relationships, and anxiety shape suffering in hidden ways. We uncovered the poisons of the mind, traced the chain of dependent origination, and found balance in equanimity. We faced death and impermanence, learned the art of letting go, and finally opened into awakening. Each step was not an escape from life, but a deeper entry into it. Each teaching was not theory, but medicine. And now, standing at the close of this journey, we see the thread that unites it all. Freedom is possible. Asterisk freedom does not mean life without pain. Pain will come. Bodies will age, losses will arrive, storms will pass through. But freedom means that we no longer multiply pain into endless suffering. We no longer cling to what must pass. We no longer fear what we cannot control. We meet life with open eyes, steady heart, and gentle hands. This is the promise of the path, not a life without change, but a life lived freely within change. The Buddha never asked us to believe blindly. He asked us to test his words, to practice, to see for ourselves. If you take even one breath with awareness, one step with compassion, one moment with release, you will taste the truth. The taste of peace is unmistakable. It is quiet, simple, and always here. Remember that this journey is not about perfection. You will stumble. You will forget. You will cling again. That is part of being human. The practice is not to never fall, but to rise again with gentleness, to forgive yourself, to begin again, breath after breath. Each moment is fresh. Each moment is an opportunity to return. As you leave this journey, carry with you not only words, but intention. Intend to pause when stress rises. Intend to breathe when craving appears. Intend to meet others with compassion and yourself with kindness. Intend to remember impermanence, not with fear, but with gratitude. And above all, intend to live awake, to see clearly, to love deeply, to release freely. The world will not stop being noisy. The winds of gain and loss, praise and blame, joy and sorrow will still blow. But with the roots of practice, you can remain steady. With the wings of compassion, you can rise above despair. With the clarity of wisdom, you can see through illusion. And with the strength of equanimity, you can walk forward without fear. So let us close not with an ending, but with an opening. The path does not finish here. It unfolds in your daily life, in your breath, your steps, your choices. Wherever you are, whatever you face, the teachings are alive within you. The invitation is simple. Live with awareness. Live with compassion. Live with freedom. May your gaze be filled with clarity. May your heart be steady in storms. May your hands be open in giving. May your life shine with the light of awakening. And may you walk each step knowing peace is not far away. Peace is here in this very moment, waiting for you to return.